Welcome, everyone. My name is Professor Jeffrey Kreipel from the Department of Religion, and this is the fifth lecture in the Rockwell lecture series on Black Lives Matter. It's my pleasure today to introduce our guest speaker. I'd like to do that in two different ways, one professional and official, and one more personal and pedagogical. Adilifu Nama is Professor of African American Studies at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. He has written several award-winning books about the intersection between African American studies and pop culture, including Black Space, Imagining Race in Science Fiction Film, Super Black, American Pop Culture and Black Superheroes, Race on the QT, Blackness in the Films of Quentin Tarantino, and I Wonder You, How Prince Went Beyond Race and Black and Back, which examines how Prince was able to assert a distinctly Black political sensibility while still being perceived as a unique musical genius whose appeal transcended racial boundaries. Adilifu Nama's work, research, and pedagogy rest at the intersection of American race relations and the various representational expressions of American pop culture. He asserts that although the organized struggle for racial justice in America is a political cornerstone for gauging the American condition, but alongside traditional sites of racial resistance is the increasing centrality of racial representation in American popular culture across various entertainment mediums such as cinema, comics, television, and popular music that are important sites of ideological, social, and cultural struggle concerning race. Accordingly, for Professor Nama, such observations are not automatically evident just by examining pop culture for negative or positive representations of Black people, Black life, or Black culture. Instead, the cultural and ideological work concerning race relations in America are frequently represented as visual metaphor or implicitly signified by racial rhetoric that engage long-standing racial discourses and hint at emerging trends. I had the privilege of teaching portions of Professor Nama's remarkable Super Black last spring in my Mutants and Mystics course. The comic book genre, it turns out, was actually one of the first to offer what Professor Nama calls, quote, a futuristic and fantastic vision of Blackness that transcended and potentially shattered calcified notions of Blackness as a racial category and source of culture meaning, unquote. I was particularly struck by how Professor Nama did not locate the full meaning of a character or mythical figure in the intentions of the creator, but in the reception histories of the myth among different readers and communities. He was especially eloquent about one of my own obsessions or real life heroes, the Marvel Comics artist Jack Kirby, a Jewish World War II veteran, likely severely traumatized by his war experience, who was well known for his own paranormal, UFO, and occult enthusiasms. According to Nama, Kirby imagined the Black Panther in the summer of 1966 in ways that broke with the, quote, passé notions of Black figures narrowly tied to the ghetto. The placement of the Black Panther in various mystical and science fiction environments exhibits a noticeable break from that pattern, unquote. Astonishingly, Kirby's Black superhero was not a simple reflection of the Black Panther Party, which had not yet formed when Kirby created his character for the Fantastic Four series, but soon would. As if Kirby was intuiting something in the air, as if the weird artist was exactly what Christopher Knowles says he was, a shaman with a pencil. Here is Nama again, quote, if ever there was a textbook example of Carl Gustav Jung's notion of synchronicity, whereby coincidental events speak to broader underlying dynamics, the arrival of the Black Panther is it, unquote. In elegantly written essays like Color Them Black and Birth of the Cool, Professor Nama goes on to trace the cultural and reception histories of figures like Luke Cage, Green Arrow, and the Falcon, in each case using the mythical figure to trace the specific nuances of a broader and potentially serious conversation around race in American society. I do not know what Professor Nama will share with us today in his lecture, Confronting Race in Popular Culture, but I know he has already shared a great deal with some of our students and with me. We are very grateful. Please help me welcome Professor Adilifu Nama.
Well, excellent. Thank you. Um, Hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm a go, and I'm just going to go for it. Again, greetings to everyone. And the first thing that I would like to do is to, in many ways, give thanks to Rice University for providing institutional context for us to engage these ideas, these issues. And certainly, I want to thank the Department of Religion for praxis. And what I mean by praxis is that this Rockwell lecture series is a demonstration of a commitment to social relevancy and engagement with and an engagement in real issues and in real time with issues concerning human and social justice, particularly attached with and informed by Black Lives Matter. And here I'll insert my own kind of like modifier here, in that when in Black Lives Matter, when I say that it demonstrates a engagement with real-time issues of human justice, I'm saying that in relationship to Black Lives Matter too, right? I mean, that's the implicit understanding, that's the implicit message that Black Lives Matter too, and that our lives, our dreams, our hopes, our wishes, our fears should be included in the holistic consideration of what it is to be human in this world, but in particularly in this American society, and that notion of inclusion, that our lives matter along with other people's lives. These type of series, these types of academic, in one way, events are demonstrate that there is a need to assert and affirm the connection between the real politics that we are witnessing and are informed by. The real politics also has to be engaged in the academy, and the academy not as some type of theoretical exploration, not in terms of some hypothetical consideration, but a real attempt to engage the moment and engage it in a way that people can become more self-aware of the moment. And so I appreciate this setting for that. And certainly I want to give a deep bow of thanks and consideration to Professor Jeffrey Kripal. Hopefully I didn't butcher his last name too much, but considering, I am very gracious with people butchering mine. So I hope I can be cut some slack there. But certainly I want to give him a big thank you for inviting me to share my particular insights concerning race and pop culture, and particularly concerning race and pop culture during these harrowing times. And so if you can already pick up on a certain type of thematic in this, the introduction in terms of what I'm saying, that I'm a constant refrain already, if you've been able to detect it, is a discussion about our political reality as it stands. We know that an election we're on the cusp of an election. We're dealing with a type of social political crisis of unparalleled experience in terms about the health of our society, literally, against the backdrop of a global pandemic, and certainly a pandemic that is ravaging and has ravaged the United States, as well as a economic crisis that is becoming deepening and may yield, more distress as we move forward. And certainly there is the racial unrest and political anxiety concerning the election and the politics around the ability to participate in a democratic process. That's a lot on the table. And in one way, we can say that I'm arguing, you could say, well, this is political. It's all political. I thought we were going to talk about the popular. And there used to be this expression that the personal is the political and the political is the personal. Well, I would like to say that the popular, as in popular culture, is the political and the political is popular. Okay. And I'm saying that because I'm arguing that we are living in a state of existence where the popular has colonized. The popular has colonized the political. The popular has colonized our understanding of the popular. The popular has colonized our understanding of the political. I'm sorry. The popular has colonized our understanding of the political. And I don't think I really have to make a grandiose case for that, because I'm not sure if you're aware that the president of the United States is a reality television star. And I don't think you can get any more of an example of how the popular has become the political. And this is the world in which we operate. This is the state of social relations as we understand. And so I want us to take a moment to really try to grapple with the way in which the popular has colonized the political. And there are several implications around that. In one sense, I would argue that this tilting, this shift, is important for us to begin to grasp, because it marks a way in which we have to be on guard for being overrun by the tenets of popular culture. And one of the cornerstones of it is that popular culture is there for entertainment. And we can see that now in our political culture in terms of a president who is rooted in ratings, right? Are you not entertained? Is rooted in ratings rather than some type of political, actual, tangible results. And so we can see how the popular and popular culture can become a type of a mind-numbing sensibility. And this is the kind of like the throwback language of the 70s, when they used to call television a vast wasteland. And that was extended into notions of the popular as well. It's like it was a wasteland of disposable products of some, I don't know, minor to, I guess, modest value. And so I'm here to deal with that in a way that hopefully we can begin to confront popular culture in a way that we can recognize the way in which it provides possibilities for a type of self-awareness, but it also provides a full of breadcrumbs, nice sweet breadcrumbs that smell extremely delectable for us to pick up and follow to nowhere, right? And so there's a way in which we have to have a certain type of expectation and a sensibility about what to expect in order to really confront and engage popular culture, particularly around race as it's been organized now. In the wake of the public execution of George Floyd, we see the response by popular culture. We see the response in terms of a type of banner raising by corporations, these apparatus, these culture industries, came out and raised their banner that they are proponents of and supporters of Blackness, right? And so there's a way in which that in and of itself can become a point of criticism. But what I would like to do is, I think that's too easy. I think that's the easy way out. I mean, I think anybody can come out and just criticize, oh, it's another example. The culture industry is coming in and co-opting and changing. And the worst example of that, in my mind, would be the pitiful, I believe it was a Pepsi commercial by one of the Kylie Kardashian, Kylie Jenner crowd, which that commercial was completely put down. And then there was the other response. There was the Imagine celebrity presentation and performativity of a type of a social consciousness shown in black and white and with the modeling music playing at the same time. And we were supposed to look at that and I guess make some type of cathartic or have some type of emotional attachment. And so these are the ways in which, yeah, we can begin to deconstruct and say that the way in which popular culture grabs a hold of something that's so tragic and grotesque and horrific as the way in which Black folk are dealing with law enforcement, the way in which their bodies are being put up for a review and examination in what I would call these type of snuff films, where you get to see Black folk murdered, and you get to see real murder, as opposed to the type of desensitized murders that we continually see in film and television, et cetera. And there's some ways in which sometimes the image of the person being killed is not, in terms of the reality of it, of a real person, does not even meet the expectations that have been built in our heads and our minds, our minds and our psychological understandings of the actual taking of a life and what that looks like. Sometimes it seems like the real thing doesn't really live up to the depiction of the real thing. And so these all become issues by which we can come in and immediately discount pop culture as a demeaning, demoralizing, demeaning and demoralizing role in our society. Okay, that's too easy, because I think there are also opportunities for a type of self-awareness, a type of challenging of the status quo, a type of, as I would call in my book, I call it a type of, we can be celebratory, but we can be critically celebratory, right? Critically celebratory. And I think an example of that for me, in terms of pop culture at this particular moment, would be, Sprite has a series of commercials, but one in particular that speaks to the American dream in terms of the African-American dream, the Black dream, and there's a type of loose poetics that are attached with Langston Hughes' Dream Deferred. So there's a kind of mashup going there, in which photography and still imagery of Black life becomes this artistic statement about what the Black experience has been and what inclusion has been made to look like, because Black people have demanded to be included. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but Sprite sells pop. All right. Sprite sells a beverage of dubious caloric intake and of a dubious carbohydrate to sugar ratio. All right. That's what Sprite does. But the same token, if we just define Sprite as this corporation that is selling us images and ideas so that we can go and drink a beverage that we probably should not drink so many of, then yeah, I guess it's all just a bad thing. But I would argue it's not all just a bad thing. And so when we begin to look at popular culture, and particularly the way in which race is presented in popular culture, these type of strident dichotomies that I think are often too, that these type of knee-jerk criticisms have to be modified, and we have to resist, excuse me, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? That's the challenge, to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so my work, in many ways, when we particularly we talk about super black, is about looking at that idea of the political, uh, grounded, interwoven into a cornerstone of the popular. And certainly one could argue, and certainly I do, that the things that are obscure can actually have some of the most long-term and deep impact in terms of reimagining the possibility of a different type of America, the possibility of reimagining a different type of understanding of race. And so, of all things to look at to get this type of analysis, or to glean this type of uh, potential insight, is in the realm of superheroes, particularly Black superheroes. But superheroes in and of themselves are these moral symbols of American values in terms of right and wrong. I mean, that is what Spidey represents. That is what Batman represents. I mean, at the end of the day, these are the good guys, right? At the end of the day, it's about how they don't capitulate to violence as a emotional, reactive stance, right? The best of these and what they have done for the last 50 years, and particularly when we talk about Marvel Comics, in terms of their success, in terms of their film profile, is that they are basically dealing with a type of morality of good versus bad. And once we bring in a Black superhero, then the issue is, I argue, is about the racial morality, right? The racial morality of a Black superhero. And in many ways, the racial morality that it provokes and that it uh, um, possibly challenges us to achieve. And that the Black superhero, if we argue this against the backdrop of a nation that has made its cornerstone white supremacy as an institution, certainly talking about enslavement and its torture economy. Let's not forget that people are, the Black folk who are working in the field, the house, or wherever, are not being industrious because it's just something that has been instilled in them from a stern boss and a stern look from the corner of the eye of the overseer. It was the threat of death and of torture and of pain that created the context for Black folk to go out and labor. And so that's a torture economy. And so when we when we talk about a Black superhero coming out, operating in a context, a historical reality of racial oppression, racial marginalization, then it's an interesting thing to see how a Black superhero actually navigates the constructed world of the comic book universe, right? And so, with that said, that means that for me, the Black superhero becomes a symbol of a type of racial reconciliation. a way in which we're going to have an image of Black men and Black women who are superior to the majority of people on the planet, right? I mean, that's who the Black Panther is. That's who Luke Cage is. That's, in terms of our white range, that's who Wonder Woman is, right? That's who Captain Marvel is. That's who, these are, you know, for all intents, these are supermen and women. And they come to represent, in terms of the Black person, something that is, I think, a potential to reconsider the politics and place of race in American society. So I'm going to do something that I rarely do. I'm going to read a portion here from my own work, because I think it's needed, in the sense that our audience may not be on the same plane here, but we're going to try to give you the hack that you need so that you can hack right into the heart of this conversation. So here we go. Regardless of whether signature Black heroes do or do not get adapted for television or film, their presence remains symbolically significant. These figures challenge the immediate experience of race in America by providing images of futuristic and fantastic Black men and women that are beyond the mundane, everyday, and familiar notions of Blackness associated with entertainment or sports. So I think probably for you, the key example of that would be the film The Black Panther. Okay, so let's have that running in the background as I continue this. Okay. Most importantly, here we go. I'll underline that vocally. Most importantly, because heroes are the embodiment of American morality and the national ethos, Black superheroes become that much more captivating as symbolic figures. They signify a type of racial utopia where whites can accept Blacks as superhuman, intellectually and physically superior, and benevolent protectors of all humanity. All right. So let's let that marinate for a moment. At the end of the day, Black superheroes embody a colorblind ethos because they do not exist to protect or save only Black folk. They do not exist to protect and save only one group from racial harm. So here we have the projection and the acceptance of how race should be seen and viewed. That it is not, it is basically, it's your character and it's what you do. It is not your pigmentation. However, accordingly, Black superheroes are towering models of racial reconciliation, and they do personify the colorblind advocacy of the civil rights movement. Nonetheless, Black superheroes also accept the use of violence as a practical means to ensure justice and the viability of their own communities, a position associated with Black power. In this sense, Black superheroes are very complex figures. No matter how sketchily the character is constructed, because they symbolize a synthesis, right? And this is what I want to talk about as we move forward, a synthesis of the politics of racial struggle expressed by two distinct movements that are often viewed as ideologically antagonistic: civil rights and Black power. One is for inclusion, and one would probably project that the other one is more separatist. One could project that civil rights is peace and colorblindness as the goal and as the means to achieve it also is to be colorblind. Yet the Black Power movement is certainly situated in a political praxis state of self-defense, that the community and personhood have to be defended, and that it is the right thing to defend yourself, that if you are attacked, you must do what you can to make sure that that attack stops. And violence is a way, or violence in terms of, as expressed as self-defense, is what we constantly see with the superhero. I have yet to see, I mean, the closest you get to a type of turning your cheek sensibility would be the Cape Crusader, right? When he is always forced at the last moment to not, eliminate, kill, murder the villain, who is a villain on all fronts. He's the villain. This is no one we're going to have a sympathetic narrative behind. These are bad entities, and yet the Cape Crusader, Batman, will not kill. He will not. He will be violent, but he will not cross that line. And so, violence is a everyday part of the superhero universe. And so it's an interesting dynamic now to see Black folk who have historically been positioned in a way in which violence is taboo, has been situated in a way in which to talk about self-defense and to be morally informed by the use of violence, to be morally informed by arguing restraint in its use. I mean, that's what Batman the Cape Crusader is. He at the end of the day, he's a paragon, a symbol of restraint, that you don't cross this line. And so it's in this way that I'm trying to stir your imagination for the folk who are out there who, by the way, I can't see. So I know you're there because the numbers say you're there, but I can't see you. But the point of the matter is, stir your imagination to consider those things that are obscure and considered disposable as actually being one of the most dynamic and can possibly be one of the most dynamic and issue engaging type of popular cultural commodities to emerge. Well, that's big talk. Let's see if I can back it up. I would have to back it up, or use for an example to back it up, would be the reception of the film The Black Panther. And in many ways, The Black Panther is extremely political. And it's political in the sense that it imagined a existence for Black folk outside of the constraints of enslavement, outside the constraints of racial marginalization. It was a film that captured the American imagination, but more so, I guess, from the studio's perspective, it captured the consumer dollar, right? The consumer dollar, and it was a film that I would argue is an opportunity to show how it also creates a point of political engagement. And this is the best of pop culture. The best of pop culture is those types of works that causes the reception of this to create a type of conversation that is woven with a type of relevancy for the moment, that the issues become grander than the narrative and the experience of pleasure from consuming the commodity, okay? And so Black Panther becomes, that film becomes such an example. It was an example that caused people to talk about race, racial divisions, the notion of divisions between a Eurocentric perspective and an Afrocentric perspective. It was a point of cause and discussion within the African American community in terms of divisions and tropes around what it means to be Black, in terms of authenticity, in terms of its relationship to Africa, notions of responsibility for historical conditions. It goes on and on and on. Now, that's a great example of a film that allowed for us to engage those types of ideas. And it's my contention, or along with others, I don't want to personalize contentions, but I would like to say, I advocate the position that it is Blackness, particularly within the realm of science fiction film, particularly within these realms of fantasy and the uncanny, where the ideas around race and self-awareness become heightened. And that in many ways, it's very difficult for Americans to talk about race. I mean, the fact that we have to see and bear witness to the grotesque killing of Black people before we can begin to talk about race lets us know that that's a threshold too far. Uh, and so uh, it's a very difficult thing for people to just talk about. But to talk about, have you seen the Black Panther film? Have you seen the H.P. Lovecraft remake? Have you seen 40-year-old version? Have you seen Django? Right? I mean, these things we can begin to just talk about, and then we can enter into a dialogue about race, but we enter through a conversation in terms of, did you like it or didn't you like it? Right? What did you like about it? When did it get good for you? When did it turn right or turn left? Right? And within that space, there's a way in which race becomes discussed and can be engaged that I would argue people feel that they're talking more about the film, and they have not, or they don't feel like they're vulnerable in terms of personalizing their own racial understanding. And so you can project, a type of racial villainous or villainy onto these characters. You can project a type of racial critique towards that type of racial villainy onto the characters. And it gives us a way to talk about type of racial dynamics that often I would say in American society is so fraught with, I guess, a personal, as it should be. I mean, I'm not saying that we should all walk around like Spock and not have some type of emotional sensibility about these things. But there becomes a point in where the emotional and real trauma of race in America becomes too much to be talked about in this type of intimate one-on-one way. And we could see the failure of these attempts when I think Starbucks had some type of, this is the popular, right? Starbucks had some cockamamie plan where they're going to put some type of racial analysis on a cup of coffee, and you get your cup of coffee, and I look at it, and I talk to the barista about race and Starbucks. I mean, that's a bust. I mean, that's not going to work, right? That's a type of formulaic, planned, saccharine. I mean, I don't know how many more adjectives I can probably give this. An ineffective way in which to engage race and the popular and the political. But at its best, there are certain ways in which popular culture can provide a type of framework for us to get into uncomfortable areas of discussion. Now, that's popular culture at its best. But certainly there is a way in which popular culture is not necessarily going to be at its best. I mean, we have to be honest about this, that the majority of popular culture is mediocre. That's just the fact of the matter. But it is the this type of constant working to achieve a type of product, a type of representation, a type of film, a type of show that is not only popular, but can be transcendent in terms of its engagement with social relevancy. And unfortunately, too often we have to look at the past for this. And too often when we try to do that again, we try to replicate or duplicate rather than innovate. And so, for example, for me, the writing of Rod Serling and the Twilight Zone is like hands down, like the superlative example of a genre and a way in which broader ideas and issues that are relevant and pertain to the cultural moment, that pertain to political aspirations, that really these twilight zones were really moral plays. They were all more, they're almost like Greek tragedies. It was moral plays, right? And centered in a type of morality without this overt preaching to the choir. And so there's a way in which the Twilight Zone becomes emblematic of the type of, self-awareness, but entertaining, but at the same time, not, as they say, preachy. Okay, so you have that example, but what I say the critique is popular culture says, well, we're going to do Twilight Zone over again. And so there is a way in which using those models becomes one of about nostalgia rather than social awareness, right? It becomes more about nostalgia and recapturing something, right, than about innovating and pushing forward. And so, for an example, I would argue a series such as Black Mirror is probably more indicative of the type of popular cultural relevancy and self-awareness. And as I say in the lecture series, a point for critical consciousness raising and development. Black Mirror, which deals with this type of social media psychosis that has become a kind of like general sensibility in the kind of like technological milieu of today. So Black Mirror becomes not about nostalgia, but people often attach it to and link it to a Twilight Zone. But it is not a Twilight Zone in the sense that it's dealing with the technology crisis of of our social imagination. And so that's another example in which popular culture can become a means to engage, of all things, the real, right? And so these are the type of odd, strange bedfellows that are created when we begin to delve into the political possibility of pop culture. But on the other end, there are ways in which pop culture can be extremely stifling. And I ran across this earlier because I want to make this discussion as I try to pivot to the digital realm, as I try to pivot pop culture in terms of race and the current moment. And I ran across an article by the writer Cassie DeCosta, a writer for the Daily Beast. And she's the entertainment writer. So that makes sense, right? It's pop culture entertainment. But there's a little portion where she talks about, I believe, Chris Pratt. And I'm not sure if you keep up on these type of things. I don't, so I have to read what other people say. But Chris Pratt was, I guess he got in some type of Twitter debate here, or he was framed in a funny way. So let me read this, and then we can get into it, maybe on the back end on the question and answer portion. But this is what the author says, the writer says: the Pratt affair is so central in the world of digital pop culture. And that's what stood out to me, that we are now living in a digital pop culture age. And so for me to talk about the Twilight Zone, for me to talk about shows like Black Mirror or these other type of, it's almost as if I'm talking about 8-track cassette players, right? When we live in a world of the digital download. And so we live in a digital pop culture. And that is the realm, I would argue, that is the place, I would argue, that research, academics, and cultural critics have to get a hold of, because we don't even engage pop culture in the kind of like analog ways that was a part of my generation, right? Where comic books were something that you actually went to an actual store and picked up and, you know, fiddled with and saw if that was the one for you, right? There's a different way in which, and this will probably be more a better example. Music. Music was a way in which one went to a place and you became accustomed to that place and what they had and when they get the shipments and when you could go and not go and et cetera, et cetera. It had a social dynamic to it. It had a tangible materialness to it. But the way music is experienced now is primarily through digital downloads. So that has changed the way people engage popular culture, okay? That has changed the way people understand what they are actually, um, um, what they're actually purchasing, right? You can you can actually hear and have a sample of the music. Whereas beforehand, this thing was packaged and contained in all this plastic and tucked away. So when you reached out there to get that album, when you reached out there to get that CD, I mean, it was a serious choice and it had serious implications in terms of how much you were going to spend and how much you either found a jewel or you felt you were robbed. That it didn't hold up to, you know, what you thought it was going to be. I say all that to say I went a little bit down memory lane, but the point of the matter is that when we talk about the digital pop cultural field, that's, I think, where we are. So the Pratt affair is so central in the world of digital pop culture, not because it intrinsically matters. This is what DaCosta says, but because it's analogous to the disproportionate influence of the wealthy and patriarchal in modern society. Patriarchal in modern society. Too controlling to just leave the Twitter plebes alone to talk their shit, box office smashing actors must protect their own from any perceived dip in marketability. Yet this microcosm offers some hope about what stubborn refusal can achieve for the masses. Like Gail Goddard's cringy Imagine video from earlier this year that just didn't transcend. Pratt's real-life Avengers rallying call will not protect him and or shuttle him to the top. So what I want to kind of deconstruct very quickly here is that the pop cultural industry, in terms of digital pop culture, is surveilling and trying to control meaning, trying to shape understanding, and it's all from a position of marketability. But there's a way in which the people themselves have confronted and will confront pop culture and lay down their assessment and understanding to shift the balance of power. And so that's what I'm trying to really communicate here, is that popular culture is not just an issue of, are you not entertained? That popular culture is a ground by which we struggle and fight to consume or to reimagine what we are being told to consume in a way that may be counter to the very discourses of racial marginalization, of gender marginalization, of ageism, of et cetera, and et cetera. But we have to be willing to be self-aware, not as a statement of like, I am self-aware looking at this, but self-aware in terms of how we engage the pleasure versus the politics, and alongside the pleasure, how are we to engage and think about the politics? So all of this, of course, is a process. It is not something that is automatically done. But I think in terms of race, I think in terms of race and science fiction, I think in terms of race and comics, I think the Black body becomes a point of and potential, a springboard, if you will, into a different type of self-awareness for both, I guess, proactive and progressive points and also for regressive reasons as well. And I'll make this point this way. There was this film that came out, I think, like Star Wars, like, I don't know if it was Star Wars 20 or Star Wars 9, there's so many Star Wars films, but I think you'll figure out which one I'm talking about. There was the one with the Black actor, and that's not Lando Calrissian. I know our time is marching, but I can squeeze it in. The character, I'm blanking on his name right now, but the character was critiqued in there was a big brouhaha around the fact that when he took off the stormtrooper helmet, that there was a black person underneath it. And there was outrage. People were shocked, like, oh my God, there's a black stormtrooper. And they felt like, oh, Star Wars isn't what Star Wars used to be, because now my understanding and my suspension of disbelief has been totally vandalized and violated by the fact that I'm seeing this black face emerge from underneath this white stormtrooper Star Wars helmet. Now, let's think about that for a moment, right? And you can also go to the Hunger Games. I think there was also criticism around Hunger Games around a person being black. We can go to, I forget the other, I think Harry Potter had some of these issues around characters being black. Now, this is what's so odd about Star Wars. So you mean to tell me if you see a black person come, head pops up after they pull off the stormtrooper helmet, you mean to tell me that is what is difficult for you to believe? The fact that there are lightsabers and a man named, a person named Yoda, who's 2 feet tall and can jump around and flip backflips, that you can go with. Like, okay, I'm along for the ride. But as soon as you see a black person pop up underneath the stormtrooper helmet, you're like, what's going on with Star Wars? I just can't get into it now. So what I'm saying, that is a point of self-awareness, that people actually are looking at blackness as a point to become aware of the constructed nature of the reality that they're being presented. And so it's very Brechtian in that sense. But listen, time might be, it is getting closer and closer to leaving some time for questions and answers. I'll see if I can provide some answers, but I'm certainly think that you have questions. So with that, I will kind of tone this down and wind this down a moment. And I hope that I've been clear. And if I haven't, I can begin to clarify what needs to be. So with that, I'll segue into the next segment of this segment.
Thank you, Dr. Nama. Those of you who have questions, please begin giving us those questions in the Q&A tool. We actually have one question that's already come in. Let's see. So, so the question is about Afrofuturism and Black Twitter as examples of pushing back against mainstream culture. I guess this is a call for you to just sort of riff on that.
Yes. So what we're talking about is, now we're in kind of the question and answer format, which means and if it comes to riffing, then you're going to see some riffing. So for me, that speaks to kind of like a punk notion of do it yourself, right? That was like punk at its best was like, you do it. Don't be confined to the conventional notions of what the culture industry has made, normal, what has been normalized. You go out there and make music. You do it. You sell it. You produce it. You make it. And so Black Twitter and in fact, Black television, BET, it's always been problematic, right? BET has always been problematic. But BET was a response to MTV because MTV didn't play Black videos. And the ones that were considered Black were, not considered Black music. So Black entertainment television, right, arose as a response to a type of exclusion, right? And so there again, you see a way in which Black popular culture, BET, is playing BS videos, right? It will be known later on for kind of like conveying the apparatus for Black female objectification and type of ongoing misogyny in terms of the representation of Black women, right? But that's, so we can critique BET for that. But at another level, BET was very political in terms of responding to the racial landscape of its time. And so that's what we have to keep in mind. So Black Twitter, I would argue, is in the same vein. But what is being talked about on Black Twitter is not all politics. I wouldn't expect that, right? There has to be this other type of more mundane, almost, the ridiculous is present on Black Twitter. So when I say Black Twitter is political, right, we have to be able to see in which ways it is and in which ways it just is Twitter. That was my pause for the next question, by the way. Take your time, it's all right.
It doesn't look like we have. It doesn't look like we have any other questions that have come in. Again, folks, please keep them coming. If you have anything more to say on that, I suppose this would be the time to do so.
Right. So I, if there's, you interrupt me if there's a question that comes up, because there's something I wanted to make sure I cleaned up, and I might not have done that. And that is, I'm talking about the Chris Pratt. And that the Chris Pratt scenario was basically about his other actors coming in to say, hey, Chris Pratt is a good guy. Don't say that he's not. He's one of the Marvel franchise characters from the Guardians of the Galaxy. And so there's a way in which a type of negative snowballing of sentiment toward the actor is being seen in some way as maybe affecting his ratings, right? His ability to bring in those extra ticket holders. And so people coming out to, are they really coming out to protect him as the person, or is this kind of like motivated by industry concerns? And what I want to highlight is that these are the ways in which the digital popular culture, or the world of digital popular culture, let me get that correct, the world of digital popular culture has to be mapped out and engaged, because there may be ways in which the popular is being, once again, it's being colonized, recolonized, if you will, by a new a formula of restriction and another formula in which particularly white male authority is being promoted and protected. And so that article and that description to me of the description of the issue is an example of the potential areas of conflict and confrontation when I talk about these vectors of co-optation and these vectors of confrontation, and certainly even the vectors of points of possible critical consciousness, that in the world of the digital popular, in the digital world of the digital popular, yeah, that I've got to figure out how we even phrase that.
But we do have one that just came in. If you want to finish your thought.
Let me finish this thought. But in this setting, we have to be aware of those new dynamics, and we have to be cognizant of how we can be constructive when we engage them. All right, I'm sorry. Question.
All right, no problem at all. What do we make of superheroes whose blackness is intentionally self-referential or part of their explicit identity? Examples given here are Black Panther or Black Lightning.
Right. So for some, the argument would be, hey, listen, why can't he just be Panther? Why can't he just be Lightning? And I'm arguing that, no, it's good to be Black Panther. It's good to have it be Black Lightning. And it's good because there should be a reminder. There shouldn't be a way in which everything becomes decolorized, right? There's a way in which Black lives matter too. And there's a way in which a type of flattening of, a type of generic racial representation where race is not even mentioned or understood or asserted becomes its own type of way in which popular culture de-radicalizes and I was going to say de-escalates, but certainly de-radicalizes the way in which race operates in American society. Popular culture should not be, I would argue, in terms of race, a place of escapism, unless the escapism is trying to make a point about the self-awareness of race. And so I'm of the mind that these characters and their notion of saying I'm the Black this and the Black that is more of a statement and has more to say about the type of intellectual, cultural, psychological tension of the reception of that figure than it does about changing what the figure says in their name. I think the more of the issue is about how people have to adjust their reception and their understanding of Blackness.
All right. Again, folks, please keep them coming in. So let's see. I mean, I can go ahead and give you one. And I guess this is also about the sort of trying to make a connection to the Chris Pratt thing. So something you deal with. In Super Black, just kind of broad strokes for those who haven't read it, is sort of this death of the author style idea where a character is more about how pop culture interacts with it, how the people who receive that character, it is more about them than it is about what the author is actually doing. And you're sort of charting this whole history of how I'm going to turn a phrase here, how Black superheroes became Black, as opposed to just being written as Black. So I wonder if there's a sense in which these celebrity figures kind of trying to control the narrative around their reception, which on one hand, on a very human level, is sort of understandable, is also sort of an attempt to, or maybe could be read as sort of an attempt to tamp down on that process.
Right. So, what I want to say to that, and in some ways, it speaks to the eclecticism of my approach. But I am offering the kind of maybe, I guess, a Marxist, cultural Marxist kind of assertion that all things that are pop culture do not exist outside of the culture that created the pop cultural commodity in the first place, or as they used to say, in the first instance. What that means is that you can have an author, you can have Jack King Kirby, all right, as the author of the Black Panther, the creator of the Black Panther, as the earlier was cited. Jack King Kirby's, I don't know if you know this, but he's not African American. Okay. But it doesn't matter, because the reception of his Black Panther will be evaluated and will be constructed, if lucky, into a Black figure. And his Blackness, the Blackness that was that was there in the image, became fully manifest. It was latent, I should say. It was latent in terms of what Jack King Kirby had created. There was a latent type of authentic Blackness, if you will, or better yet, an authentic Black aesthetic that was latent. And through the years, the decades, that latent became manifest. And it became manifest in this film, starring a Black person. It became manifest with a director and writers, right? And before that, it was Reginald Hudling and his writing of the Panther, and Christopher Priest, this Black person, writing of the Panther, and Ta-Nehisi Coates takes over and writes for the Black Panther, right? And so we get to see the kind of like a cultural critic, Ta-Nehisi Coates, very politicized to this racial analysis, is now the lead writer of a comic book. So if that doesn't tell you that how the popular has colonized the political, that we live in a world of the popular, I don't know what is. But it speaks to also, when you ask that question, about these type of latent, I think, racial aesthetics that become manifest through a process of reception and rewriting and reception. So it's a dynamic process. And so there's a dynamic part of what it means to engage popular culture if we're talking about opportunities for critical consciousness, right? It does have that. It is latent and sometimes it's manifest. But I would argue the job of all good writers, in the spirit of Rod Serling, is to make what is latent, is to make it manifest in terms of a type of self-awareness about oneself and the world that we live in.
Well,
let me add something, since I've got a moment to kind of like add more, because it's one thing I'd be remiss if I didn't say, is that in many ways, I've talked about the culture industry, and I've talked about in terms of reception and maybe even flirted with notions associated with fandom. I haven't come out explicitly and kind of name these things. I think that would be probably better done in a class during a semester. I don't want to try to just overwhelm you, but I think this is a time that I think certain media theorists and philosophers are important. And for me, Jacques Ellul and his work, particularly around propaganda and the formation of human beings' ideas. I'm taking some of the gendered slanted language out of the title. But the point of the matter is, I think Jacques Ellul is an important figure to revisit, not only in terms of the notion of propaganda and the atomization of a society and what that means in terms of media reception, in terms of the reception of ideas through film and television, and particularly this world of digital pop culture, right? This world of digital pop culture, that Jacques Ellul's work becomes work to be underscored and deconstructed, and even dealing with the notions around the superhero and the morality of self-defense and the ethics of self-defense become important as we move forward in these harrowing times.
Well, we have no more questions that have come in. I suppose. I suppose there's always a sense in which you'll always have the final. Oh, I have one more. Can you comment further? Oh, we have two more. Can you comment further on the entertainment value of the president's rallies and general self-preservation, a topic that you raised in the beginning? What constitutes entertainment, and to what extent must entertainment cater to so particular a taste?
Right. So I would argue that we're living in an era of spectacle. That entertainment has lost one of, I think, its key transcendent elements, and that is wit. There's nothing witty about these rallies. There's nothing witty about the village people blaring in the background and half dance steps being made on the stage, right? There's nothing witty about it, but it does make for a great spectacle. It does make for a type of entertainment in the sense of the Gong Show, and that's what it is to me. When I see those rallies, that's the Gong Show, and the Gong Show was not really for where the talented went. It was like, who's the best out of these worst group of performers, and so there was no wit. It was for guffaws. It was right there in front of your face. It was a type of crude spectacle, and you know, the climax, so to speak, is to make the gong ring loud, right, and have the person shuttled off of the stage. And so that's what I see when I see the rally. I'm waiting for Chuck Barris to pop out from one of the corner side exit stage right. I'm waiting for him to pop out and ring the gong, right? So that's it's a spectacle of entertainment, and there's no wit, right? And so with no wit, it can't transcend. It can only just speak to a type of stimulation, right? Entertainment as stimulation, and a stimulation that is a droningness to it, that it actually becomes overstimulation. But yeah, there we go. I'll stop there. I think there was a second question.
Yes, there was. This one is simpler. What do you make of Lovecraft Country?
Yes, I was hoping somebody would ask me that question, because I think Lovecraft Country is very problematic. It's problematic in the sense that it's like Attack of the Clones, but it's even more problematic than, let's say, a Black Nick Fury, because a Black Nick Fury exists as an extension of, I guess, the original white Nick Fury. But if we don't know anything about H.P. Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft was a racist, a virulent racist. And so there's something about taking the material of a virulent racist and then saying, well, we've recreated it. And I'm like, well, okay, you can, but there are no other non-neutral type people to recreate something. There's no other Black stories that can be recreated or just present it. We don't have to recreate, let's present it. There's nothing as spooky and strange that H.P. Lovecraft is the best that we can offer when we talk about all the absurdist and surreal and horror and grotesqueness of the Black experience, where the monsters were really real. I mean, do we need H.P. Lovecraft in order for us to tell our Black story? And so that's problematic for me. And it's like, for me, it's like doing a remake of Birth of a Nation. It's like, you know, but we're going to do it with a Black spin. I mean, it's like, why do we have to remake D.W. Griffith, his movie, right, to put a Black spin on it and to get some type of racial recognition out of it? So for me, that is extremely problematic in terms of the aesthetics and the politics that are vested in any idea of a Black aesthetic and a critique of whiteness, where now H.P. Lovecraft gets another life. So I'm not sure about, I want to give the, mystic racist or racist mystic any more seance time. I say we turn the lights on this guy and break his crystal ball and we put up our own stuff. But hey, maybe that's just, that's just my thing.
Okay, well, that was, I enjoyed that answer quite a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did too.
All I need is one, man. That's what Nas says. You just need one mic. All I need is one. I got it.
I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A.
That's a good one. That's a good one to go out on, though. I like that. I like a hearty chuckle at the end of a lecture.
I mean, if we have no more, I mean, we have no set time. If we have no more, and you're satisfied with where that leaves things, then I think we are too.
Well, listen. Let me just say this. I appreciate the forum. I deeply appreciate the opportunity to share whatever insights that I have, and that certainly others have deemed to be of some value to deciphering and hopefully being more aware and being more, as they say, a critical thinker. It's a term that's always been thrown around for the last 50 years. We want to build critical thinkers. So I hope that I've been able to do that in some manner, given the medium. The medium is the message type of thing. Given that we're working in this type of dynamic where the only person I see is really is me, and so there's a certain type of uncanniness to lecturing to yourself, but you're not. But I just want to say, nonetheless, if anything was unclear, it's not because you don't have the capacity to understand it. I would think it's more along my ability not to make it clear enough for you to understand it. So that responsibility, I would say, rests with me. And I hope that I've been able to be clearer than muddled. And if not, I have confidence that as the seminar goes forward, some of these ideas that may be a little murky now, the next lecturers and academics will come in and really put whatever I have said in its proper place and understanding. So thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Nama. We're so lucky to have you here, and we hope we have the opportunity to host you in person in the future.
For
those of you who might still be in the attendees, this is the fifth lecture series this fall. Fifth lecture in the series this fall. There's another one on November 5th. Please keep your eyes open for the RSVP. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a really, really good day.